They are in Jerusalem, and they're transported to Babylon. So, what was Babylon like during the time of Daniel? Well, perhaps the first record we have of Babylon is the Tower of Babel. Now, perhaps, don't know exactly, but perhaps this is the same city, the Tower of Babel. Babel means the gate of God. This is the city where they tried to build this tower that reached up into heaven. They were not scattering like God had said. They appeared to be very arrogant, so God confused their language, and they were scattered throughout the world. This city of Babylon continued to be inhabited generation after generation, nation after nation, continuously inhabited until really this bright day of its history during the time of the Babylonians, during the time of Nebuchadnezzar. And there has been a huge amount of archaeological discoveries in Babylon of this time frame that Daniel lived in, the time frame of Nebuchadnezzar. This is the stele of Nebuchadnezzar, which is in the Israel Museum. And at the bottom of this stele, it says, Nebuchadnezzar was one of the greatest kings of the ancient world. He was a great general and conqueror, a great builder, and one of history's ablest administrators. This brick is ascribed to the king's names and his titles. As a matter of fact, this is another brick that was found in this area of Babylon. It is said that 9/10 of all of the bricks that were used to build Babylon have Nebuchadnezzar's name on it. Could you imagine building your house, and every brick on your house, you put your own name on it. Jeff Archer built this house. Put your name on there. The whole city, 9/10 of all of the bricks found in Babylon have Nebuchadnezzar's name on it. In the British Museum, there is the Babylonian Chronicle that chronicles the history of Nebuchadnezzar for the first 11 years of his reign. 605, in which he conquered the Assyrians and Egypt and also Jerusalem, through 594. The map of the extent of the Babylonian Empire during the time of Nebuchadnezzar is large. I don't know if you could see very well on this map, but you have all the way from modern-day Turkey and into Iraq and Iran, all the way down Kuwait to Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Israel, all the way through the Sinai Peninsula here down into Egypt. All of this area is controlled by Babylon, which is here at the coming together of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And this city is really basically the center of the world at this time. Nebuchadnezzar has these military campaigns, and he brings back from Egypt and also Jerusalem the spoils of his victories. And Daniel and his friends are led on this journey of 900 miles, which would have taken them about 4 months. 4 months they are led from their homeland of Jerusalem, and they are taken to this new place of Babylon. Now, it's hard to imagine being a teenager, ripped from your home, from your mom and dad, and taken to a new place where you don't know anyone, you don't know anything, you know you're going to be retrained in their culture, and you're not going to have any freedoms. It's just hard to imagine what this 4-month trip, the anticipation of entering into this city of Babylon would be like. It was an immense city, as a model the archaeologists have made of the city of Babylon. And it was so large that the Euphrates River flowed through the middle of the city. And it was expansive. The walls were tremendously tall and wide. And there were some 50, archaeologists have found evidence of 50 different temples that were made in dedication to the false gods that the Babylonians worshipped. And here is just a couple of them. On this ziggurat, on the top of it is a temple, and then across the way there is the temple of Marduk, which Marduk was apparently one of the main gods of Nebuchadnezzar. And you remember that he takes from Jerusalem, from the temple of the true God, articles and treasuries from that, gold from that, and he transports them along with Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and all of the other treasuries that he has accumulated from Egypt and his other battles. And he is bringing those, and he is placing the articles of the temple perhaps in this temple of Marduk. There is a procession, modeled the procession street of Babylon, that led to the Ishtar Gate. We don't know exactly how Daniel and his companions were brought in, but perhaps after this 4-month period, they, along with all of the treasuries and perhaps the brightest of the brightest of Egypt and other nations too, are brought along this procession. And perhaps there are people that are lining the ways, that are screaming and shouting as they see the treasuries of all of the world coming to this one place of Babylon. And these young men are going to be escorted through this to the perhaps to this one gate. And in fact, archaeologists have reconstructed the Ishtar Gate from Babylon in the Berlin Museum. And you see all of these bricks on the sides that have these various images here. One particular one is of this dragon that represented Marduk, or perhaps the favorite king or god of this king Nebuchadnezzar. As they would go in, there is also perhaps, this is an artist depiction of the gardens, the hanging gardens of Babylon. One interesting note, I don't know if you remember a gentleman named Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein ruled this area of Babylon. And in the Bible, during the time of Nebuchadnezzar and the kings of Babylon, God said, because of your wickedness, I am going to destroy Babylon, a city that has been in existence for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it will not be rebuilt. It's going to be destroyed, and it will not be rebuilt. It was destroyed, and it was in ruins. Saddam Hussein comes along and says, I am the new Nebuchadnezzar. Sometimes he said he was Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. And he said, I am going to rebuild Babylon. Well, here's the results. You remember what happened to Saddam Hussein? The man's dead. And Babylon is still in ruins. What we're reading here in the book of Daniel, not a collection of fairy tales. We're talking about real people in real time. These individuals, I'm sorry, I was supposed to show you that. There's Babylon today. Still in ruins, and it will always be. The book of Daniel, we are reading of these 4 young men. What happened to them? Were they able to make good choices of faith? Were they able to maintain some morality in their lives? We're going to read about 70 years of the life of Daniel. It was a different time, a different place, a different culture, a different language, but exactly the same challenges of faith that we face today. Long time ago, but just like we have to make choices, we can learn from the choices of Daniel. Now, I know this hasn't been a typical class. I've talked the whole time. I don't typically like to do that. I like to have some discussion. I don't know, we have a couple of minutes left. Anybody have any observations that they would like to make on this introduction to the book of Daniel? Yes, sir.
It's
We're going to talk about that in the first lesson here, so don't say any more about that. That's right. Anybody else have a question that I can cut off if you're getting into material I'm going to be getting into? Yeah, that's right. Spoiler alert. That's right. That's right. But God, I hadn't really, until I studied it. I did this series back last year in June, and I hadn't really thought it through that. That they perhaps were made eunuchs. And I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now. I did this series back in June of 2020 at Jordan Park, the Jordan Park Church, jordanpark.org. And I was able to go through the whole book. So since we're not going to be able to go through the whole book, feel free to go back to that, and you can see lessons that go through the end of the book. Now, I caution you, don't do it yet, because you got to hear it live first, at least the ones that we're going to be able to get through. But we're not going to be able to get through the whole thing, so you can go over to that and see any of those other lessons that you'd like to. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and we'll pick up from there.